Hello and welcome to Meet Your Inspiration podcast with Mary and Rich. Here we are talking about inspiration, empowerment and motivation. Our guests are real people with ordinary background who became extraordinary. With sharing their stories, we want to help you and to inspire you to succeed and to become the person you want to be. Today's guest is a very incredible woman, and if I can just say a few words about her, there will be a lovely mother, strong woman, and a courageous cancer survivor. We are very pleased to welcome Jo Wilkinson to our podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Jo.
And those kind words.
Welcome, Jo.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to meet you this morning.
Thank you.
So, how did you start when you left school?
Yeah.
And how did life start off?
So I left school. I went to Loughborough University, and I did a social policy degree. I probably didn't work quite as hard as I should have, so I stayed on to do a master's, and I did a master's in marketing and management. And then I didn't really know what to do, so I went off and travelled the world for a year, which was amazing. And
Anywhere exciting?
I did sort of the usual backpacker trail. So I started in Asia, flew into Bangkok, worked my way down to Singapore, over to Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, North America, and then down to Mexico City.
Wow, big adventure.
Yeah, it was huge. And I had planned to go with someone, and then it didn't quite work out in terms of timing. So I ended up going on my own, which was pretty scary at the time, but it was incredible because it made me meet people and met lots of different people on the way. And it's funny because I think everybody sort of does quite a similar trail. So someone that you met in Fiji, you might bump into in Mexico City.
Wow.
And it made the world feel very small, actually. It's quite incredible. Then came back from there and obviously had to knuckle down and actually get a job. So I started as a PA for the directors of the home department at BHS, so the retailer. They were amazing people to work for and gave me lots of opportunities. And that's then how I sort of started into my marketing career, because they opened doors for me at BHS that I could then move into a marketing role. And I worked there for probably about 12 years. In that time, I had my son, and we were living in London, and we decided that we didn't want to raise a child in London, so we moved back down to Faversham. So I'm originally from Herne Bay. My parents were down this way, so it made sense to...
How long you were coming home again?
To come back, yeah. And actually Faversham, my husband and I were still both commuting up to London, so it felt like a good location. Train links were really good from there. And then I had my second child, and whilst I was on maternity leave, that's when BHS started to fold as a business, and I was made redundant, which actually at that time, was quite welcome because I couldn't really see how I could have commuted with two children in nursery in Faversham, and if a child is sick, as they often are at nursery, you're a good hour away from picking them up. So I was made redundant from BHS, and then got to have a little bit of extra time, sort of maternity leave with my daughter, which was lovely. And then found a job at working for Global, which is the company that owns the radio stations like Heart, Capital, LBC, Smooth, all those.
Wow.
And I had a part-time job working for them, which was great, actually. The hours were perfect. But it was during that time that I actually started to get symptoms of what I then found out was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I only really worked there for about 2 years. And actually...
So it was a big shock as well. You find these things and it's a shock.
Yeah, it was a huge shock, I think.
What were the symptoms you had at that point?
Well, I think the first symptom was exhaustion, like total fatigue. But I mean, and sort of it's something that I think about a lot now, and how life masks our symptoms, you know, stresses of life. So I had this, you know, total exhaustion, but I just thought, I'm a busy mum and everybody feels like this. You know, this is how every mum, working mum, feels with kids and juggling. It's just everybody's tired. We're all tired. So you just kind of sweep it under the carpet and just drag yourself through the days. But I think fundamentally the symptoms that I had were not dissimilar to glandular fever.
Okay.
So I had swelling in my neck, so where glands are essentially. I experienced swelling. And I had problems with sort of circulation. So quite often my face would go grey, where I wasn't necessarily getting a lot of blood to.
Wow, okay.
So if I bent over or which what it actually transpired was a tumour that was pressing on quite a major vein and stopping the blood flow to my head. But I did go to A&E and they said, we can't find anything that's wrong with you. And I was sort of in tears going, but I know I'm ill.
Really wrong.
And they said, well, we'll test you for glandular fever. If you don't hear from us, it's not that. Otherwise, we'll ring you and we'll let you know that it's glandular fever. And actually, they discharged me from hospital, and that evening, about 10 o'clock at night, they rang me and said, oh, yeah, it's glandular fever. So I was like, oh, okay. And I'd actually had glandular fever as a teenager. So I was like, okay, well, I guess, you know, makes sense with the swelling and the fatigue and okay. And so I just went along with, oh, I've got glandular fever. And I actually had to have quite a lot of time off work because I was so tired. And then 3 months on, I kept going back to the doctors.
3 months?
3 months on, yeah. And the doctor's like, well, you've got glandular fever. It does take time to recover. But new symptoms were kind of presenting themselves. And so I'd keep going back and I'm like, oh, but now I feel a bit breathless and I've got this cough. And they say, but, oh, you know, you've got glandular fever. Like, it's not an overnight thing. Like,
and nobody didn't try to look for them.
No.
They just say,
yeah. So it
is what it is, and that's it.
Just it takes time. Was kind of the message.
Become dangerous at that point.
Yeah. And actually, we were due to go on holiday to France. And I went to the doctor and I said, oh, I don't know if I should go because I don't want to be ill abroad. And they just said, oh, I think that's probably what you need, like 2 weeks.
Wow.
Like, go and rest. That'd be great. So we went on holiday. I was really uncomfortable and my husband kept saying to me, oh, you're like walking with a hunchback. And I was really bent over and I would go swimming, but I couldn't swim. Like, I had no buoyancy. Like, I'd try kicking, but I'd just sink in the water.
Wow.
And then when I came back from the holiday, I was like, oh, I'm going to have to go back to the doctors. This isn't right. And actually, I saw a different GP. And I just said to her, like, I'm really breathless and perhaps I'm having panic attacks. I don't know. And I can't swim. And immediately when I said I couldn't swim, she was like, oh, okay. And what had actually happened was my right lung had collapsed. So in the pool, I didn't have the buoyancy because it was...
Because you didn't have the air in your lungs.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And that's what made her realise.
Gosh.
And so it was at that point that I had an X-ray and then I was like straight into hospital. And that was when they realised that it was... I mean, immediately they knew it was...
But at that point, obviously, I'd imagine the tumour must have grown quite a lot from where it must have been at the beginning.
Yes, it was quite considerable by the time I was diagnosed. But the cancer... So I had primary mediastinal large B-cell lymphoma, so meaning that the main tumour is in the chest.
Right.
So that was quite bulky at that point. With some smaller tumours in other places. So I can't remember where I was going with this.
But at that point, it must have been absolutely terrifying because to realise, because it's a shock as soon as someone tells you.
Yes, it was. But it was also a bit of a relief because I had felt so ill. Yeah. And I was like, oh, like at least
Finally,
it's
they know
something.
what it is.
Yeah. Whereas before I was just sort of plodding along going, oh, well, I'll get better of it. And also with work, it become a bit embarrassing because I was having so much time off, and they're a bit like, oh, she's tired again. She can't. Oh, she's tired again.
Yeah, so it doesn't seem real. People don't realise.
Yeah.
And until there's a proper something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
so I
not
finally
justifiable
had
almost. Yeah.
something tangible.
Yeah.
But even from that point, diagnosis was difficult. The NHS. I mean, this was pre-COVID, so I'm grateful that I had it pre-COVID because even at that point, the NHS was massively stretched, and it took 6 weeks from the point of them saying to me, "We know that we're 99% sure you have this cancer," to actually getting a biopsy.
Wow!
And you cannot have treatment until your biopsy is done. And I was under the wrong department. I was under respiratory, and I needed to be under haematology, but haematology won't take you until they know. But yeah, and then had the biopsy, and it was confirmed, and then it's like amazing. It's like another.
Because then you go under Macmillan Team getting support.
Yes, yeah, and I actually, so I was originally being treated between the William Harvey and Canterbury Hospital, but on the very first day after my diagnosis came through, they said to me that UCH in London were doing a trial on my type of cancer, that specific cancer. Did I want to go up and meet them and see if I was eligible for the trial? Which we did. I don't know how I got there. This is at my lowest point. But my husband and I got the train up and then a taxi to the hospital and met the team that would then treat me, who were on another level of amazingness. And I met my consultant and she talked me through the trial, which actually for any cancer patient facing a trial is really difficult. So for me, the trial was that in the UK, the type of cancer I have, you have chemotherapy and then radiotherapy, and that is standard. But because of where the tumour is, obviously there's quite significant organs, so your heart, your lungs, breasts, and you're having radiotherapy through those to get to the tumour.
Which also creates other risks.
The risk then of cancers later on is greater. In America, they treat only with chemotherapy unless radiotherapy is needed. And so the trial was that I would either be part of two groups, one where you just have the chemotherapy and one where you have the chemotherapy and the radiotherapy. And did I want to be part of this trial? And that's a really difficult question because you don't know what
is better.
And you have to make the decision really quickly. And I'm like, well, oh gosh, I don't know, because is the radiotherapy important in that it's going to kill the cancer? So should I have the radiotherapy anyway? Or, is it okay if I just have the chemotherapy and then later on, if I need the radiotherapy, I can go back and have it? You just don't know. So that's, I think, for anybody in that situation, is really difficult. You just don't know.
How do they target because obviously with chemotherapy, it's one of those really, almost, again, like a blunt instrument almost, isn't it? Because it's sort of like often it's just you sort of put it on a drip and connect it. It goes into the body and it just goes everywhere. And then everything in the body starts to, because it gets destroyed because the chemotherapy is like poisoning all the different parts of the body. And in its cause, it's going to also poison and destroy the cancer.
And actually, before you start chemotherapy, that you have to sign a consent form because obviously there is risks. And they talk you through the risks. And at the end of it, you're a bit like, I don't know if I do want that, actually. And I was admitted to UCH at this point, and the consultant's there, and you have a cancer nurse specialist. She was there, and they sort of go through all the possible outcomes, and and my mum was there, and Andrew, my husband, was there, and so at the end of it they say, "Oh, so you okay to sign the form?" And so I was a bit like, "Oh no, I think I might need to think about it actually, because some of those things don't sound great." And the consultant's a bit like, "I'll be honest with you, there's nothing really to think about because you have to have it."
Yeah.
So you're a bit like, "Oh, okay."
It's like the one choice you either, if you're going to have any opportunity to get well,
exactly,
unfortunately you've got to have
it. And so you're a bit like, "Oh, okay, I'll just sign it then, shall I?"
Sometimes it's better to not know everything in
Yes,
details.
But in our world, they have to tell you everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun. But actually, what transpired was I wasn't eligible for the trial in the end. So the decision was taken away. My tumour was too big. So they said, you will have to have radiotherapy. And again, relief, because I was like, oh, okay, great. I don't have to make that decision and then worry that I've made the wrong decision.
Yeah.
So when you had the chemotherapy, when you first started, obviously the first time you have it, obviously, I guess you're sitting in the chair and there's this drip sort of, and it's going in, and it's, they read your name and here you go, this is the situation. And at that point, it's probably just like being on a normal drip. You sort of don't realise, but then it's the effects normally is within 12 hours, 14 hours, 24 hours later.
Yeah.
Did you find a sudden change then in the body straight away?
Well, I think so. For me, I was at a very low base level, so I was very poorly.
Yeah.
And actually, the first chemo that I had as an inpatient, and I was in hospital for a week.
Okay.
And I think, say for example, breast cancer.
Yeah.
You find a lump in your breast, but fundamentally you feel okay.
Yeah.
And then you go into hospital and you start treatment and you're floored by the treatment.
Yeah. You were already floored already.
I was already at that point. And actually, because I had a collapsed lung, I started steroid treatment very quickly and just start having steroids, which are used in asthma patients, and had high dose steroids, and immediately my breathing became much, much better.
Yeah.
So actually, for me,
you start to feel better.
I started to feel better when I had the chemo. There's lots of, I think I'd been in hospital and I'd been on a drip for a week. Your veins start to feel very bruised.
For sure.
And so it's painful, you know.
Because every time they put the old thing in, and it's
different
one.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was in the whole week, so it never came out. But I was constantly being flushed with all sorts of things. And actually, I was 38 when I was diagnosed, which is considered young. My survival chances were really good. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma has a good recovery rate, a good cure rate.
Which is really reassuring when they're telling that.
Exactly.
Even when you're feeling horrendous.
Yeah, exactly. And my consultant was like, we want to make you as fit as possible. Your cancer is aggressive. We want to speed up the chemo. So normally you have chemo on a 21-day cycle.
Yeah.
She was like, we're going to do yours fortnightly and we're just going to get through it quick.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I was lucky in that, you know, I shaved off. I had 6 rounds of chemo, so I shaved off 6 weeks of that treatment time by having it fortnightly. So, yeah, I think for me, physically, I started to feel better quite quickly. Mentally, I was battered.
Did you go through the hair loss thing as well?
Yeah.
Which obviously is always very difficult.
Yeah, and they did say, my cancer nurse specialist said at the beginning, you will lose your hair. There's nothing, you know, some women try cold caps and things like that. She's like, there's no point. Don't do it. You'll lose it before your second round. It'd be very quick.
So did you have it cut? Because some ladies have it cut and then they go and get a wig.
Yeah, I had it. I had long hair and then I had it cut to kind of like bob length.
Yeah.
And I did go and see a wig lady who was amazing in Herne Bay. Would definitely recommend her. And she was lovely and she helped me choose a wig. wig shopping is a funny thing because everyone goes, go crazy. You can get pink hair, you can go curly, you can do this. Like, enjoy it. This will be
Just
wonderful.
to try it.
And you're going, but I don't want a wig. I don't want to be bald. So, you know, and I went with my sister and my mum, and they laugh at me now because I was like this angry teenager who...
It's a very emotional thing.
Yeah.
Very emotional.
And it's almost like I went with my mum and my sister, a bit like I would have gone wedding dress shopping, but it's not wedding dress shopping, it's wig shopping.
Yeah.
And I was really cross that day, and the lady was lovely and she did her absolute best to cheer me up. And then we actually went for like a cup of tea at Whitstable Castle afterwards, and I didn't want to talk, and I was really upset, and then we'd ordered some cakes, and my mum and my sister got their cakes first, and my sister was like, oh my God, I wish he'd bought your cake first because you're just so angry. I don't know how you're going to react to this.
Wow.
But for me, hair loss was really difficult. So nothing prepares you for it. And I think ultimately you go from somebody who's getting on with having cancer and not many people know to now everybody knows. So like if you pick your kid up from the playground, oh look, there's Ruben's mum, she's got cancer. I mean, it's everybody.
Particularly if you have the little cap, you know, obviously at that time some people have the cap.
Yeah.
Because I guess as well, because a wig, if you put a wig on, it's like wearing a hat. Your head gets hot.
Yes, yeah.
Because it's not a wig is not the same situation, is it? So it has that big effect.
Yeah. And actually, I bought a wig and I wore it once. I never wore it. I was like, I kept thinking, God, what if I'm out in the street and the wind blows and the wig falls off and a dog catches it and runs off down the road with it? So I never wore it. But you know, at the time, you just go through the motions of what you think you need. And yeah, hair loss was hard, but and that's what drove me in the end, inspired me to do what I do now, because apart from being a reflexologist, I've experienced cancer, and I want to support people through all the elements of that. And it's having your first chemo and the panic of when am I going to feel? You know, I remember sitting in hospital and going, right, it's been an hour. When am I going to start being sick? Well, not yet. Okay.
Because you heard stories about this and
and
you expect something to
2
happen.
hours. Am I going to feel sick now? And actually, I did see a counsellor in hospital, and because I became quite anxious about it, and she said, "But do you feel sick right now?" And I was like,
"Because the nausea is almost constant, isn't it? That it can be like to feel sick and to feel dizzy."
Yeah, but they have drugs for everything. So, and that first week in hospital, I didn't have to worry about a thing. A little pot would be delivered every time I needed tablets. In would come these amazing nurses, and I have to say, the ward I was on, they were incredible. I was in a room on my own because you were at high risk of infection.
Absolutely, yeah. Was it a complete isolation unit? Because sometimes they have the cancer wards and it's almost complete isolation. I'm very careful about people coming in with
I could have visitors, and that was fine. But I was separate. We were separate from each other as patients. But the nursing staff were like your family. They were so amazing, so supportive, and just really, really lovely people.
They just have a tenderness which is like nothing else.
Oh, yeah, and Ron was this one chap who was, I guess he was like the main nurse on the ward, and he was just so kind. And there was another lady called Pong, and she knew that it was quite difficult to get blood from me because my veins are quite small. And if she saw a nurse coming who wasn't very good at it, she'd almost distract them and then get someone else in to do it. And she'd be like, "Oh, I know that he's not very good at taking blood." So I stopped them, and I was like, "Oh, you're such an angel." They were just
something that I don't get it, and this how people talk about the awareness that took so long, months, 3-4 months, because probably everything might be easier to go through if you was paid attention a bit earlier. And all the people you can hear, they talk a lot about, if you notice for signs, please contact, please. Where are these moments and problems that you've been numerous times and nobody didn't want to go and try to see what could be? They just stop on one thing. And is it because obviously they don't have enough people? Is it because they don't? Because obviously the next step, once you were obviously diagnosed, you're saying that the team was great, very helpful, and everything is. But sometimes it's great that for you was perfect. You're lucky, you get through, but they're probably different kind of cancers as well. Things
and very different outcomes. And you're right. I think not the problem, but you go to your GP, they are general practitioners. They are not the experts in all the cancers. And actually, what I've learned from this is that you have to listen to your own body, and you have to keep going back and don't just take it. I think if you think about, and this is not all GPs, I've had some excellent GPs, and the GP that I'm with now is fantastic, but some GPs may be too quick to, I went in to see the GP one time and he said, "Are you after a sick note?" And I was like, "No. Like,
I just don't feel well.
I don't feel like, no."
I think it's one of the things which I picked up with you said, and I know I've heard it said before many times, is you go and see the same GP. The GP then comes out and says, "Right, okay, you've got glandular fever." So now every time you go back, well, it's your glandular fever. It's the same, like, I don't know, with people get funny tummies and stuff, and then you've got IBS, and like, "Oh, you've got IBS," and they don't investigate beyond it. And it's not until you go and see a different doctor, and you get a second opinion, and you're waiting to see something, and they may just know something else, that someone else that they've seen has had that same trigger point, but the other person's, or once they've got that in their mindset, and you need that variety. And I think that's a really important thing when you're going through this investigation, to have the opportunity, because as an individual, when you go and see a GP, you can't force to say, well, because you don't know where the direction is. And I think one of the things as humans, it's not until you go into hospital and you hear about, everyone says, "Well, I had cancer." So everyone just goes this huge, "Oh, you got the big C." But actually, it's like, it's any part. Cancer is like some cells which are formed in the body, which are basically, the body's immune system is failing to sort out that particular problem. And that's why it's so varied, and it's so many different types of cancers. And when you hear about all these different cancers, and some people like mention a cancer and they go, "I've never heard of that." And I think that's one of the hardest things with it. So that
but obviously,
variety,
to take from this, and obviously your experience, and like for people who listen us, probably, as you said, listen your body, and if you feel and think that something is wrong, don't stop going back, and eventually go for another opinion as well,
definitely.
because obviously we know best ourselves.
And just having ownership of. So I mean, at the time I wasn't happy. I did feel that I was misdiagnosed, but actually it was probably at hospital level as well, because I'd been in to A&E saying I'm not well, and they'd said, "Oh, there's nothing wrong, but we'll let you know if it's glandular fever." And so I requested all my notes, and I have all my notes for that period, and all the blood tests, all the results, and there were indications there, but they were also indications of other things. So I'm not saying that.
No. It's just in general, we do understand. Sometimes, you don't know. There are lots of cases that people don't know until a certain point. But it's like if people feel that something is not right,
then
do not
with
stop.
it.
Just to try.
And
to
also,
find it.
So I'm on blood thinners now, and as part of that, I have a yearly blood test that checks like your liver function, kidney function. But I will always say, "Can I have a full blood count, please?" Because I want everything checked. And so I will ask for that, and then they'll say, well, why do you want that? And I just say, because I still feel anxiety, and this is an opportunity to just check that everything's okay.
Do you still have connections? Obviously, because like once you get past 5 years after the treatment, then normally the support, well, it doesn't disappear. It's always sort of there.
Yeah.
But do you find now, because maybe you're not so in contact with the Macmillan team?
Yeah.
Because while you've got a Macmillan team and you've got a Macmillan nurse, you've got the Macmillan team is actually, I mean, it's quite incredible. And I always wonder why in the NHS they don't have other type of teams in the same way to help with other situations. Because cancer is one of those things where you speak to your Macmillan nurse and they organise everything for you, because they're your day-to-day contacts, and you can phone them almost any time. They're on the end of the phone, they'll support you. But you get to that point at the end of it, and all of a sudden you're back on your own again, and you almost got to go back to the GP and go back and to get into that situation. So I can understand why you'd want to make sure you keep getting your bloods checked.
Yeah. So I think for me, I am 5 years in remission now. Woohoo! So I'm out of that period, so I'm considered cured.
Yeah.
Because of COVID, actually, that period of having contact with my team and my consultant was shorter.
Yeah.
Because they obviously didn't want people travelling, coming up for checkups.
Yeah.
So actually, I think I stopped having any involvement with them around 2 years.
Oh, wow, okay.
But I am still under haematology because I still take blood thinners and haematology at UCH. So they check in with me once a year, and I actually really enjoy that. Well, I'm pleased that I still have that.
It's reassuring.
Yeah, really reassuring. Because I think that is another thing when you come out of treatment. So all the while you're having regular chemo, you're having regular blood tests. When you have radiotherapy, you're seeing someone all the time. They're still scanning you. You're a bit like, well, I know it's not getting worse because someone is looking at it all the time. So when that stops, you are a little bit rudderless, and that is a really difficult period mentally. But as time goes on, it gets easier, and it's a bit like having a baby. Immediately after birth, it was the most stressful, traumatic thing you've done. But then 11 years on, wasn't so bad.
What kept you mentally through all this? Because obviously, mum of 2 lovely kids.
Yeah.
I know Andrew was always next to you.
Yeah.
And what I've seen, you had quite supportive friends as well, which I think as well helped a lot. But what you learned during that process, and what kept you this faith and positive mentality to go through it and to know that?
I think you just have to be positive. Like, it's much easier. I mean, it is difficult and it's scary, and it's, was there times where I, during my treatment, I think we went to a fireworks display with the kids, and emotionally it hit me. Oh, gosh, will I be here
next year?
Next fireworks display? And things like that were really hard. But you have to get up every morning. And actually, I was lucky that I had young children, because I did have to get up every morning. They didn't understand. Like, Chloe was 3. So she still wanted mummy cuddles if she didn't feel very well. And she still wanted me to do her hair and play with her hair and tickle her and all those things. So having young children helped massively. I think, you can either go down a rabbit hole of feeling really depressed.
Because some people go really depressed.
Yeah. And I won't say I didn't have my I think...
No, of course you're going to have this.
My mum and dad were really good, and they actually stayed with us, so that if I wanted to do the school run, I could, and if I didn't feel up to it, I didn't have to do it. And they could carry on the kids' clubs, so it was all, their routine didn't really change. But I think in the 6 weeks from knowing that I had cancer and getting my biopsy, I laid in bed quite a lot. And my dad called it wallowing. And he said, and some days he would say I was doing necessary wallowing, and some days it was unnecessary wallowing, and I should just get up. But like waiting for diagnosis, I did struggle.
I
think one of the hardest things, and I don't have interest in to do with the experiences, but when you go to an oncology centre in a hospital, which is normally a department obviously on its own, and in that waiting area, when you're sitting there are people in all sorts of different states. And it's in that particular area can be incredibly emotional, because there will always be there's going to be someone who's in tears. There's someone who's in a lot of pain. There are others that maybe have just received the news and come out and then sit down. And then there's others that maybe have just come out and seen a consultant and just been told they're going to go home. And unfortunately, you're going home to die. So, and there's all those emotions in that area, and it's, I think, having been into one of those areas, it's
but this is where
really,
Joe, this is coming the good courage. Thing that what you find for you, and obviously tell us about reflexology. Because you said that this helped you a lot. You found this.
So when you have treatment, you are offered through Macmillan some free holistic therapy. So it might be massage, reflexology, counselling. And I had reflexology. And actually, I even had reflexology as I was having chemo on some time. So I think you get 4 free sessions. And then locally here, my mum was put in touch with a charity called the Harmony Therapy Trust, and they fund 6 free sessions of therapy, of holistic complementary therapy. And again, it could be all different things, but it relies on local therapists to donate treatments. So actually, it's a little bit more limited. You could just go, oh well, I'll have a massage this week and this, that. Because actually, who are the therapists locally that offer the treatment? So I was put in touch with a lady that did reflexology, and I had 6 sessions with her, and I had it throughout my treatment. And yeah, I really enjoyed it.
So what is basically doing the reflexology?
So reflexology is based on the theory that all the different parts of the body, so the organs of the body, the systems of the body, are mapped out in your feet. It can be done in your hands and also your face. And so you have these reflex points. So for example, your big toe is your head. Then the toes after that, like your sinuses. There's part of your foot that links to the spine. And as reflexologists, we work through those reflex points, looking for imbalances and trying to clear those imbalances so that the body works in the best way that it can and just flows holistically.
But usually it's not just one treatment you go for. Do you need to have quite few, or it depends on the situation?
It really depends on the situation. So every reflexology treatment is bespoke, and it's tailored to the client, what they're going through. So whilst I started reflexology to support cancer patients, I see lots of different things. So irritable bowel syndrome, stress, anxiety, all different things, post-COVID, long COVID. And so we would always talk to the client and then work out the best treatment plan for them. If you're really stressed and stress is affecting your life, one reflexology treatment is not going to change things. Because actually you fundamentally need to change your lifestyle. So for somebody who is experiencing high levels of stress, a weekly reflexology treatment for 6 weeks is going to start to really calm things down. And the idea is that you get your client into a better place, and then you start stretching the treatments out. So they might have it weekly for 6 weeks, and then, you might go to a fortnightly, 3 weekly, monthly, 6 weekly.
Mm-hmm.
I would always advocate that somebody continues on like a 6 weekly cycle, and then if things change, you can then top up again, and help support that person.
So when you do reflexology, so you're using on the feet.
Mm-hmm.
So the person is, I guess, lying down. I guess.
Yeah,
or
or
do they relax?
reclined.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you're touching different points on their feet.
Yeah.
I guess fingers or thumbs or
thumbs generally,
Yeah.
but you might get a little knuckle in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the person is obviously then hopefully becoming very relaxed.
Yeah.
Is it sort of just peaceful and they just have quiet music, or a bit like when you go to a spa and you're sitting there like with sort of like a quiet and just relax, and then obviously you're just working on these different areas?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, some clients come and they want to chat, and they'll chat, and that's fine, and we can chat all the way through. I think I would always advocate to someone, switch your phone off, take your smartwatch off. You know, the amount of times clients come and then their phone rings in the middle, and I'm like, oh no, what a waste!
Yeah, because the whole thing is stopping.
Yeah, or their watch buzzes with a message, and it's like, oh, what a shame. But so the treatment room is set up the same all the time. So I've got a lovely couch. So the oil that I use in my oil burner is always the same. So the scent, the smell's the same, the music is the same. And so as a client, actually, when they're regular or they've been before, as soon as they reach the door, you know, they smell the same smell, they hear the same sounds, and straight away the brain's going, okay,
this is my happy place.
This is my time. And so that never changes. And then, clients come in, we have a chat, and we'll get them comfortable on the couch. You know, they might have a blanket to keep them warm. And then I always start with a hot towel foot cleanse. And at that point, again, it's always the same. And 99 out of 100 clients, you'll hear them, oh, and you're like, yeah, good. Okay, now you know you're switching on. And then I will, based on what we've talked about or based on how their week's been, I will then work different reflex points. And, you know, yes, it is a bit like a foot massage as well. And if you don't believe in reflexology, you know, madly people don't know, but I get it. You know, some people don't, and it's like hypnotism. Some people don't believe in that. You know, all these things. Some people just fundamentally.
Does it tickle? Oh, one thing. Does it tickle?
Yeah, lots of people say that, but we use a firmer pressure, so it's firmer than a tickle.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was imagining if someone's really ticklish, and then as soon as you touch the feel.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes the towels are a bit like, ooh. But yeah, firmer than a tickle pressure. And it is deeply relaxing. And actually, again, that's the point of having regular treatments, because your body gets to know that that's its time to switch off. And I will always say to clients, particularly clients who have very busy, hectic lifestyles, think of a place that you love. You know, is it a beach? Is it on the pebbles by the Dordogne River? You know, think of a place where you love and feel super relaxed. And when you're having your treatment, think of that place and the warmth of the sun and the cool breeze and, oh, there's a drink there, and, oh, I've got my book. And then when you start to think, oh, I need to go to Tesco's after this, bring yourself back to the place so that you get the most out of your treatment. And, you know, some people just go to sleep. They don't even, you know, they're just out of it.
And when they're asleep, do you think it continues to have the same effects to them?
Well,
because they're not conscious.
I believe if you fall asleep, that means you're so relaxed,
super duper
and
relaxed,
so feeling good that you just fall asleep. Yeah,
and that's the biggest compliment, really.
Yeah, I would
when
say.
A client goes to sleep, because you're just like, you obviously trust me enough. And again, the regularity of the treatment, you know, we build that rapport and that connection and that trust, and that helps people to relax to a deeper level. Because otherwise you're a bit like, oh, who's that lady and what's she doing now? And
You keep an eye all the time. What's
yeah,
going on?
yeah, exactly. Or have I had my amount of time? And and so but yes, it definitely still works. And actually, you're going to float out of that room if you've gone to sleep.
I want to take you a bit back. Obviously, you were going through reflexology. You've been inspired by because help you.
Yeah.
The lady, just take us to that story from experiencing to obviously having your place. What's happened during that time?
So I was working for Global, and then I decided to do a course in reflexology. So I started training at the London School of Reflexology under a lady called Louise Keat, and it was I was doing it, and then I was like, what am I going to do with this? I don't know, because I was still working. And then actually I was made redundant from Global because they closed the local breakfast station. So where I worked, the office was closing. And so that was
The sign.
a great, exactly, a sign and a push to actually follow the passion now. I'd been in marketing long time, and now it's, okay, this is a completely different tangent. And then I was a bit like, oh, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, I'm going to speak to my reflexologist and tell her and see what she says, because she might be a bit like,
local competition.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so I spoke to her and she said, great, come and work for me.
Oh, wow.
So we'd obviously connected, and she was like, yeah, great, do the course. Let's work together. So I was like, brilliant. And that was amazing for me, because I then qualified, and then I came under the wing of Vicky and worked for her. And so it was like a stepping stone, because I don't know, I sort of started reflexology, and then I had this kind of imposter syndrome of, why should I be doing this? What am I giving to other people? Am I just rubbing their feet, or am I actually delivering something? And so working for Vicky was brilliant, because I could say to her, like, oh, I'm worried about this, and I feel nervous about this, and she'd be like, but we know it works. You've had it. You know it works.
You are the great example of that it works.
And little things would remind you of it working. And it's crazy things, like you might say to someone, oh, your tooth reflex point felt out of balance, and they'll go, I had a filling last week, and it still amazes me.
Wow.
Still amazes me.
Wow.
And you don't always get those results, but there are definitely times where you'll do something and there's a huge connection.
Wow.
So I worked for Vicky, and then we had COVID. Obviously, everything had to shut down. We couldn't do holistic therapies or touch therapies. And then when things opened back up, we started back up. And then Vicky decided to expand the business a bit more, took on someone else. And then I think things became a bit more difficult, because she was now a business owner with multiple employees. And actually, she wanted to get back to what she loved, which was delivering reflexology. And so she brought the business back down to just her. And so we parted company. But again, it was
your time to experience, obviously.
Yeah, and it was a great opportunity for me to then go, okay, I'm going to do this. And I set up my own business, Hidden Meadow Therapies. And I now have a treatment room at home, which
I've seen, and it's great.
Yeah, and
so
I love
definitely,
it.
And we'll share a lot about the links and everything where you can find Jo.
How long does it take? Like when you have the therapy done.
Yeah.
How long does it take for each person, or is it different for each person depending on their?
Well, typically you have an hour appointment.
Okay.
And that involves like a 10-minute consultation period, and then a 45 to 50-minute treatment.
Okay.
Some people will love it, and so I also do facial reflexology.
Oh, okay.
So I do feet and face. So this week I've had a client, she's like, I'll have them both, please. So she will have like a double appointment.
Wow, okay.
And yeah, she was totally relaxed at the end of that.
Is there a moment that you can't send them to go because there's so much they enjoy that they don't want to go?
Yeah,
Especially
yeah,
if they
I
fall
do.
asleep. How you
Yeah.
go and wake them up? Excuse me, it's
yeah.
finished.
We definitely, as therapists, you have your. So just coming to the end of your treatment, because you have to bring them
You
back.
have to
Yeah.
wake them up.
You don't want to frighten them either. If they're in a
No.
really deep sleep,
Yeah.
like, oh, where am I? And yeah, it is quite, just coming to the end of your treatment if you'd like to take some nice deep breaths. And with a facial reflexology, so I am a member of the Association of Reflexologists, and as part of that, and of course, as should be, you have to do continued professional development courses.
Yeah.
So I tend to do courses that interest me and things that I've experienced. So cancer, menopause. I focus on those things and things that I like. So
Yeah.
I like facial reflexology because I like having my head massage. So I would go and do an Indian head massage course so I could incorporate that into my facial reflexology. I went and did a facial course because I thought, can I incorporate some of that into, lovely cleanse before your treatment? But on the facial course, they had a thing where they use they spritz a toner over the client at the end, and that's
really?
your wakey wakey moment.
It's raining.
Yeah, very gentle mist, wakey wakey.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, which is really nice as well.
It's unbelievable how, I think this is something as well that I really admire about you, how you take this, what helps you, and you become your passion, and now it's your job.
Yeah.
And I assume, are you as well part of...
The charity?
Yes, the charity,
Yes.
sorry, to
Yes.
help people.
Yeah, so I have worked with a charity, and I love it.
What's the charity called that supports it?
The Harmony Therapy Trust.
Okay.
Yeah, they're based on the Isle of Sheppey, and they do lots of fundraising, and you've got really passionate team who are really lovely. And I was so pleased to be able to go in and meet them and say, I was a beneficiary of what you deliver, and now I would like to
give something back again.
be part of
Talking
that.
about fundraising, I know that you are taking part of really big, either cyclings, either running, walking.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, obviously, during the cancer, you had problem with lungs. Does everything now works on 100%? And how you actually, after the cancer, you managed to do? I remember, I might be wrong, was it a year or two ago, you've done cycling really big challenge?
Yeah.
So how you actually do all these things now? How is your...
Health-wise?
Health-wise,
I'm I would say virtually back to normal. And I take blood thinners, so I still have residual scar mass from the main tumour. Where the tumour was, it squished the superior vena cava, which is one of the main veins to the heart. And that was why I would get this kind of greying in my face, because the blood flow wasn't flowing correctly.
Yeah.
So there's still an element of squishedness in that area. So I'm fine, but things like I wanted to do yoga, but actually being in a
positions that they take, it's not helpful.
It's
good
not
for you.
Yeah, so I would then go a bit red. I could go quite red in the face, a bit swollen, and then have to get up.
Yeah.
But I don't do a lot of things that, cleaning out the bath, hoovering, things like that. I'll go, I feel a bit like, but I just stand up and it's fine, and I take medication.
Yeah.
So physically, yes, I am fine. And I think, again, going back to an example of having a baby or going through cancer treatment, it shows you what your body is capable of, which is like a lot.
Remarkable recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that your body, so thinking about that compression of that main vein, And this was actually another symptom that I had. I started to get funny little veins, like that I could see on my chest, on my tummy. And actually, that was the body creating veins that bypassed.
Wow.
It's incredible. That's so incredible. So, yeah, like your body is capable of so much.
Reacting to recover itself.
Yeah, and actually we can push ourselves quite a lot, you know. You know, like you said, chemo treatment, you're pumping your body with essentially poison.
And it's going everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yes, I've tried to do you know, sort of one big challenge a year to raise money. And it's hard because I don't want to keep.
Do you choose something different? Because obviously Macmillan is obviously the impact. I mean, a lot of people obviously in Macmillan take a lot of money, obviously, and raise a lot of money through funding. Obviously, when people die,
Cancer research
cancer.
Usually as well.
Cancer research as well is another one.
Cancer research is the one that I normally support. But I've got an old contact from university actually, and her son. It's heartbreaking, really, but he has got brain tumour. It is curable, but she's raising money at the moment. So instead of doing an event at the moment, I'll then sponsor her. Because you know everybody is doing. You know, lots of people.
Oh yeah, unfortunately, it's full of people who need the help. Yeah, and whatever we can help is good. We can't cover everybody and everywhere, but it's what else I would like to ask you? It's obviously you are inspiration, I'm pretty sure, and you will be one day. Probably already you are for your kids, but one day know much more and the people around you. But did someone in your life play the role that kind of the inspiration of what you want to do, or being that role model that you wanted to follow?
Well, I think probably lots of people. I think I'm lucky, like I had a nice upbringing, a good relationship with my parents. I've got a very good relationship with my sister. So I've had my life's quite happy, you know. So and that I think I channel that happiness because I'm lucky in that respect, you know. Got 2 children. They are at the moment very well behaved, but we're about to enter the teenage years, so who knows what's going to happen there. And I am lucky that through everything that I've been through, I've had a very stable lifestyle. So my husband has continued to work, and nothing's really changed. So I've always been very lucky. I think really, if I think about what inspires me now, it's the nurses. It's the people who create the drugs to cure cancer, or the machinery. I mean, gosh, how clever.
Because you've been there and you've seen that side of...
I think, you know, I've always been pushed forwards by my parents. I've always been given all the opportunities, you know. I went to a good school, could have worked a bit harder, but then I had the opportunity to go to a good university, and my parents have always been really supportive of that. And my sister, you know, she's older than me, so sort of followed, you know, she went to university, so I went to university. And
that foundation really makes a big difference to life, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The stability there, and the assurance to have the support of your parents and your family around you, particularly in those difficult moments when you feel everything's not great. You know, have someone special around you at those points is just really lifts you out of any darkness, because you've got a purpose again.
And we've never had to worry like financially, because my parents would have helped us, Andrew's parents would have helped us if we needed that. So we had like this huge safety net to fall back on. You know, if I'd wanted a wig and I said to my mum and dad, I can't pay for it, if they were like, if you want a wig, we'll get you a wig, you know. So I've always been very fortunate in that respect, you know, that we had a really wide group of friends and family to support us, and who really did support us as well, and you know, not just say they did, but really
they really were there.
Yeah, you know, showed their true support by being, you know, there.
How you juggle the life today? Obviously, now you keep doing probably the school runs.
Yeah.
You work.
Yeah.
You're back to the usual life. How
Yeah.
you find? Did you learn anything, or did you change anything from your lifestyle before? Are you taking a bit more time for you sometimes?
Yeah.
Take it easy and things like that.
Yeah, I think what I've really learned is about managing stress levels and overwhelm and anxiety, and how much harder it is to come back from that place if you get to it. So put the measures in place before you get there. So obviously, you know, life's busy with kids and work. I actually work for a marketing agency as well, so I do the two things. So reflexology it's very important to me that I have a small client base. I don't want to wake up in the morning and go,
20 people.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so busy, and
you want to do it with the passion and the time, not to rush, just to have the clients.
And also, I want to go into each client's treatment in a positive way. So that means having time between clients as well to just decompress and get ready for the next client.
Though it's not physical, but it must be quite mentally exhausting, because you've got to be thinking all the time what you're doing, and you're feeling for things as well.
Yeah, and obviously some clients aren't in a great place.
No.
So emotionally, it can be...
Because you're taking some of their emotions, they're sharing things.
And actually, you have a connection between you two, an energy connection. And sometimes it can have a really profound effect. So if a client is very tired, it's almost like it comes through the touch. Not always, but sometimes I can finish a treatment and be like, whew, I'm exhausted. So you need to have time, build in time to get over that, and then go into your next client fresh, so you're not actually passing that on to the next person.
Do you have clients that actually almost come, I don't know, like so regularly, like maybe once a month, and they just keep coming, or do people generally have a course and then they stop? I guess it obviously varies, but obviously some people just want to come.
It's a total mix, but I have clients that come every week.
Okay.
Every week.
Wow.
And if I'm like last week, I was on holiday for half term, and then like they came this week and they were like, oh yeah, I do miss it when you're not here.
Wow.
And you know, you can't have it enough. But in any way, so really, fundamentally, in every day, we need to build some sort of relaxation into our day. So I know you love colours, flowers, sky. You know, I love that as well. So there's nothing better to me than laying on the grass on a beanbag at home, and my garden's surrounded by trees. And when they're in leaf, they're a beautiful green against a beautiful blue sky. 5 minutes. Just lay there for 5 minutes and enjoy it and listen to the birds. And, you know, there's so much free stuff as well. YouTube is endless, isn't it? Of things that we can listen to, exercise we can do, yoga. So I think for me, I put things in place to prevent overwhelm creeping up. So my sister and I, every morning we text each other our day's to-do list, and then we send each other an update in the day where we've ticked some off. And sometimes my to-do list will be massive and it's overwhelming, and I'll say to my sister, I'm not going to do a to-do list. I'm going to do 3 things that I want to achieve today, because I can't achieve it all. And actually, if I just put 3 things on and then I message you at 11 o'clock and I've ticked off 2 of them, and then at 1 o'clock I've ticked off all 3 of them, I'll give you another 3 things that then I'm going to focus on for the afternoon. So it's about putting those things in place. And actually, so I have my reflexology clients. I also work for a marketing agency, Story 22, which I love as well. And again, that's very, for me, I work well with a list. So I'm like, right, here's my list of things to do for that. But I'll also have on there, like, pay the PE clubs, or, you know,
of course,
pay violin teacher or whatever.
Lots of things.
Yeah. And actually, I love a tick list. And, you know, when I've got 90% of my green ticks on there, I'm like, woohoo!
The sense of achievement is much greater.
Yeah, exactly.
One of our latest guests said that read a book, and she was following as well this with the big lists. And sometimes you can't tick everything, but the book teach her that as well. It's good to look on the side, like how many things you actually tick. And every tick means success for the day. Doesn't matter, you couldn't cover 20. If you cover 3, if you cover 10, you still cover
achieved
something. So that's great.
You've moved forward.
Yeah.
You know, you've changed. You've done something that day. You've
because nowadays the life is so busy for everybody, with all this, even the traveling to work and come back is taking ages, and to juggle at home and being mom, father, doesn't matter, and doing your job, it's crazy. So this is why people are getting this, the stress levels are going up, and it's good everybody to try to find time for themselves, whatever makes them happy or relax, but to find it, because otherwise the body is kicking another way to give the messages.
Actually, for my own personal, you know, if I hadn't have just gone, I'm a busy working mum of 2, would I have realised much earlier that something was fundamentally really wrong? I just said, everybody feels like this. And everybody, to an extent, when you've got young kids, you are tired, aren't you? Like, but not bone achingly tired. And that's the thing. And being stressed affects the body in so many ways. So, you know, the way we hold our tension, you know, it's affecting your physical form. IBS, you know, how many people's IBS is triggered through stress? You know, fertility issues triggered by stress. So many, it has such an impact on so many things.
And that's why nowadays we can hear lots about that, because it's the effect of the life we've got today.
But I do think as well, and I don't know if it's an age thing or if it's to like life today, but I do feel like people are much more open about it. And I don't know if it's because, you know, when you're in your 40s and on, you do acknowledge it more. I don't know. But mental health seems to be a much bigger topic.
Very much so. It is.
Yeah.
Because we need to learn to look after each other and to look after ourselves. As they say, if your, how was the sentence? If your cup is not full, you can't help and do anything for the others.
So if you haven't got the energy for yourself.
These are very important, not just quotes. This is real thing that we all have to follow, where we forget. Sometimes we blame ourselves, especially I would say, if I found time for myself, sometimes I'm like, okay, but you can do something for the house, for the child, for the family. But no, sometimes you really need to go for that walk, to listen that song or read your book.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's managing that guilt of, oh, I should be doing the washing up, but actually, and I will say to clients as well, the moment, so don't shoehorn in because you feel you have to do 30 minutes of yoga every day. You know, you might say, Monday's going to be my yoga day. Tuesday is a really busy day for me. So that is a sit in the garden for 10 minutes day. That's it. 10 minutes, you know, Wednesday might be my reflexology day. Thursday, you know, and because the moment you actually start feeling panicked by the fact that you're sitting in the garden for 10 minutes. It's then doing the opposite effect of what it needs to do. So, it's about finding that balance, but equally thinking there's 24 hours in the day. I can take 10 minutes for myself. And actually, I'll perform way, way better for the rest of the day. I mean, we know that with exercise, if people do a workout in the morning, their
day is different.
output is...
Or even going for that walk, like a 20-minute walk is just, it's switch off, relax, you've got time to think. You're absorbing, like, say, like
the
beauty
beautiful nature
around you, like, whether it's a bird song, you might be walking in a woodland and just seeing things, and it just finds you at an inner peace.
Yeah. And if you're just pushing through the day and you're heading to your work, if you actually take a lunch break and step away from your desk, you come back with fresh ideas and a fresh perspective. And sometimes that's way better than just powering on through and just, I've got to get this done. But actually, I'm going to take 5, 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, and then I come back at it with a fresh perspective and I see it in a whole new light. Oh, light bulb moment.
And you actually become more productive.
Yeah.
You do. Yeah. No, that's good.
Yeah.
Fantastic, Jo. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
It was really absolutely great to have you here to listen your story, and we are pretty sure that we sharing this story, lots of people will find something for them to listen and to know that obviously to keep that positivity and be determined that the things will get better. And obviously whatever happens in life, sometimes even if it's really bad, you can find the positive income and to bring it and to bring and definitely obviously to help people after you, which is fantastic.
I think there's one, I don't know who said it, but it's let the things that you go through, tell your story, and it will become part of someone else's survival guide. And that's so important, isn't it?
Exactly.
By sharing what you've gone through. Definitely.
Thank you very much for your time and being here with us.
Thank
you, Jo.
Thanks.
We hope everyone's enjoyed listening to us, Jo, this morning. And we just ask is if you've enjoyed the episode, please give us a like. If you're watching on YouTube, please do subscribe. And if you're listening or watching on Spotify, please do follow us. Thank you very much. And thank you, Jo. And we'll be back with you very soon.